We're back with episode 11 of the Unstoppable podcast. I'm joined by two great friends here today, Andy and Mike. They flew in from all over the world to be with us, so we're incredibly grateful to have them. I'm excited to share today's episode, and in this episode, we're going to share exactly how you can run a business, or if you're working in a demanding career right now, you're busy, you're short on time, you're under pressure, you're overwhelmed. We're going to show you exactly how you can stay in shape while still enjoying travel, social occasions, and ultimately achieve your potential. So that's exactly what this episode's about. So great to have you.
Great to be here.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, where have you came from then?
Well, I've obviously been all over Europe this summer, really, but obviously from Dubai. So I've actually only come from the UK, so I haven't come that far. But yeah,
Bit of a delay, bit of an easy jet delay.
Yeah, hour and a half.
Not ideal.
Not so speedy boarding.
What about you, Mike?
I had an early start this morning. I've flown in from Spain. Earlier in the year was in Dubai, then Jersey, then Spain.
Yeah, and with the whole travel thing, I suppose, what kicked that off for you? Because obviously you're originally from London, but what drew you to living abroad?
Well, for me, it was a holiday that never ended for Dubai. It was meant to be literally just a trip, and then I just stayed there because I just saw the lifestyle. So just stay there other than the summer, and then obviously bounce around Europe for enjoyment with the freedom I've got.
Yeah, what do you like about the lifestyle?
Everything. Weather, social side, everyone's positive, obviously good for business. There's nothing I don't like about it. Golf. Love the golf there.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of similar. It wasn't a holiday for me, but I'd see people like Andy and other friends of ours, mutual friends of ours that had moved to Dubai or other places, and with our work, being able to work remotely, I kind of got sick of the rain and the cold, and just decided, Dubai or Spain or Florida, much better environment than the cold and grey of the UK.
100%. And I think so many people can learn from that, because often people see moving abroad as an escape. And I think for you guys, it wasn't that, because you were already happy at home. You were enjoying your life. You had built a business and you're in a good position. But sometimes you just have an opportunity that you want to take and an itch that you want to scratch. And that's essentially probably what that was for you, because I think so many people move abroad for the wrong reasons. Like a lot of people in Northern Ireland will move to Australia to almost escape. And I understand the weather's not great here and things like that, but it's trying to actually do it for the right reasons, which you've probably done. And I suppose back to when we first met, talk us through how we know each other and how we became friends.
It was a coaching network, wasn't it? So we all know each through the same networking for coaches.
I think you joined slightly after Jonny and I, right?
Yes. Probably a few months, because the early stages of it, really, wasn't it? I mean, we were all in it for years. But it's the good thing about our industry is that you do make a lot of friends for it, don't you? That's the thing.
Yeah, and it's nice that there's it's not competitive in any way. It's nice to be friends with someone in the same industry that you can bounce ideas off. And every time we come here, it's always, we'll meet up, we'll go for a coffee and we'll bounce ideas, find out what's working right now, and in the form of client delivery and how we can deliver a better service. And I think, three minds are better than one. So it's nice to be able to kind of share those ideas. And I suppose there's some funny stories when we first met in Dubai.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's been great since we've all met. We've stayed in touch. And like you said, bouncing ideas, having a network like this where we can kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what's working, what's not working, how to adapt, and how we can all progress our businesses collectively.
Yeah, 100%. I think environment plays a big part in that, and being able to be around the right people that are actually inspiring you and not draining your energy. And I think that's exactly what we have in this friendship. And it's nice to be able to meet up in different areas, different environments, and constantly kind of share what's actually going on right now. And I suppose talk us through the Sam Curran story, Andy.
Oh, that was a funny one. Yeah, another late night in Dubai drinking, and so we're in this place. Forget what it's called. And then the guy actually working there came up to me first of all, didn't he? He said, "Oh, you look a little bit like Sam Curran." I went, "Oh no, it is Sam Curran, who is a cricketer, by the way, English cricketer." So then he's like, "Oh, is it really?" I was like, "Yeah." But I think because he was over in the UAE for cricket World Cup, whatever it was more believable, wasn't it? So then this guy wants a selfie with you, and we just milked it all night, really.
That was hilarious. Like everyone was coming up getting selfies with me, and we were just going with it. And then Andy phoned the next bar that we were going to go to, and he booked it under Sam Curran. And then we walked in, and we got this fancy table because everyone thought we were Sam Curran and co. So that was a good experience, and I think we had plenty of good times in Dubai. And I suppose whenever you think about your favorite part or the moment that you decided that you were going to move there, so obviously maybe a lot of people listening have never been to Dubai. For you maybe spent a little bit of time there before, but what was the kind of deciding factor that you said, right, I'm going all in with this?
Well, yeah, I think you're right there. We went out. I think the first time I went out was when we both went out. We met up with Andy. Yeah, had some laughs, had a great time there. I went out again with a view to moving there, just because a lot of our mutual friends were there, the environment, what I'd heard from people like Andy about the area, and yeah, just the people, the environment, the weather, the climate, everything that's what drew me to Dubai.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose when you were moving, did you have any fears of like what if spots, maybes before you moved?
Not really, because I'd been there for probably 8 months before I made the full decision. But the way I look at it is like it's literally a plane flight away. Like if you go there, it doesn't have to be indefinite, does it? So it's like, well, if I've done my time, I want to go back, you just go back, don't you? There's nothing lost. So for me, but yeah, there was no looking back after, really.
Yeah, I think so many people struggle to make decisions as well, and especially a big decision like moving abroad is a big decision. And I think for me personally, if I'm making a big decision in my life or my business, it's writing down all the positives of doing said thing, all the negatives of doing said thing, and if the positives outweigh the negatives, absolutely go for it. And a question that I always ask myself is, what's the worst that could happen? So essentially for you, it was just like, well, if I don't like it, I'll move home.
Yeah, 100%.
And obviously, fitness-based podcast, a lot of people listen to this will want to get in shape, become healthier, become fitter, have more energy, perform better. Thinking back to yourself, Mike, whenever you first started into fitness, so I mean, very first time you maybe entered a gym, what was the reason behind going?
So the very first time I entered was actually before a lad's trip to Magaluf. And I was like, I can't go over this skinny. I'm going to be taking my shirt off. All the lads that I was going with were skinny anyway. But I was like, I can't. I had all these kind of preconceived notions of what was going to happen over there. And I thought I need to take care of my physique, be proud of what I'm taking over. And that was my kind of first experience of the gym. And I had no frame of reference. So in that 6-8 week period, I put on a decent amount of muscle mass. And all my friends were like, what have you been doing? And then after that, I didn't really touch the gym again for another couple of years, until I understood a little bit more about it. And then because at that point, it was just purely aesthetic. That was my first exposure to the gym. And then when I started to understand a little bit more about how it can improve confidence, how it can improve health, mobility, all that stuff, that was when it became a little bit more ingrained. And I started to follow it a little bit more closely.
Yeah, and obviously you're a humble guy, so you'll probably not share this, but following that, I presume this was after you got into martial arts and worked your way up?
I'm trying to think now. It's been so long since I started the gym. No, I think I was first in the gym, kind of early 20s, got into the gym. And then I got into martial arts a little bit after that. And actually my kind of size and my ego, if you like, when I first started martial arts, the muscle was kind of like gave me a false confidence. And I went into martial arts, which we can talk a little bit more about later. I go in there thinking, like a lot of lads do, that having a lot of size meant I was tough. And I learned quickly that it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And so these guys that I went in when I was learning martial arts kind of salivating at the fact that I was a fairly decent size. I was a doorman at the time, all these kind of alpha traits, and they just tied me up in knots, mate. Yeah. I got slapped around that gym pretty quick.
Building momentum. So Mike is now a black belt for anyone listening in jiu-jitsu.
BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I always get mixed up in these. But talk us through the process of doing that and what you learned from starting out as a beginner to being able to then achieve what is the peak of martial arts in the form of a black belt, from what I'm aware?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like that, I'd been in the gym for a little while. I was actually watching a lot of the UFC. And so me and my friends would watch it and we think, oh, this is really cool. But they'd all say, well, I'd never try that. It looks brutal. I thought, well, I'll give it a go, you know. Went down to a local club. Like I said, got tied up like a pretzel my first few sessions. But there was kind of this ongoing theme that a lot of guys would go in if they thought they were tough, and then they get humbled pretty quick and leave. And I thought, well, I don't want to be that guy, you know, so I kept going back, getting my ass handed to me, but kept going back. And then, so I was doing MMA at the time, mixed martial arts. Ended up having a couple of fights in that. And jiu-jitsu is a integral part of mixed martial arts, but I wasn't focused on that purely. Like, so people wear the gi or the kimono, as it's called. I wasn't doing any of that. I was just doing the mixed martial arts side. And then after that, when I decided that I didn't want to get punched in the face anymore and I wasn't getting paid enough to take those risks, I decided to switch over to BJJ exclusively. And that's when I started progressing through the belts. And it's like, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about this, the consistency. It's like anything, like whether it's fitness, whether it's business, you progress through turning up consistently, doing what's required. It's not a blast and cruise type mentality. And that's how I got to black belt. And they say, you know, an old quote that's used in jiu-jitsu is, a black belt is just a white belt who never gave up.
Love it, 100%. And it's so true, because people maybe, if we were to apply that to someone's fitness journey or trying to get in shape, it's all or nothing. Like 1 minute they're all in and they're doing the next diet and the next crazy training program, and the next minute they're completely out and doing all the wrong things. And you know, I think it was Arsene Wenger, the Arsenal manager, shared once in the year that they won everything and didn't lose a game. He says, I want my players to be consistently good instead of occasionally great. And you essentially focused on being consistently good, showing up and doing the basics well. Sometimes it's boring, and progressing towards something like that, whether that be getting in shape or building a business, it's repetition. It's constantly doing the same thing over and over again. Of course, if it's not working, if you expect a different outcome, it's not going to work. So it's trying to actually show up, do the necessary stuff, but consistently do that over time, which is exactly how you achieve that. And fitness for you, Andy, kind of the journey or the benefits, share a little bit about that for the listeners, because obviously you've been in shape for a long time now, you've looked after yourself for a long time now, but what have you taken from that?
A lot of things, really. For me, like it just has to be a stable, non-negotiable for me, because I'm somebody that could never relate to those people that thought, oh yeah, exercise, it's really good for my mental health, because I'd never not done it. I'd never experienced the not having good mental health and actually the lows. But when I've then got at times very overwhelmed with business, I've had to then focus on that, and I might go, even if it's just a few days or a week where I barely train, I do notice the difference in terms of energy's lower, my mood's lower, more snappy. And for me, so it just has to be, it makes me feel so much better as well as look better. So it's always been a stable, because I was always into sport. Much like Mike, I got into it because it was just solely about trying to look better and feel better. I wanted to have abs. I just, for me, the pinnacle was having abs. I didn't want to be big and muscular. It was, I want to be lean. I want to have a six-pack. So when I was 16 to 18 to 20, and then I got a six-pack, it was like, I never want to let this go. And in some ways, it went too far based around that. So at the point where I probably lived a decade neglecting a lot of things that had to be the main priority, I felt bad if I wasn't ripped to shreds. And I think we'll move on to that later in terms of mistakes we've made maybe and whatever. But yeah, it was always about trying to look athletic, and for, you know, attracting a better looking female for my own confidence around that, I guess.
100%. And I think often you can't see the benefits of something before you start it. So what you perceive the benefits, what they might be, they're completely different whenever you get into that. And I say that to people all the time. You know, people say, you know, they'll share their targets or their aspirations of what they would like to work towards, and I say, yeah, that's great, that's exactly where you're at right now, and what you perceive to be the benefits of that. But once they get into the process, they soon realize, oh, the benefits are completely different than what I thought they would be. And for me personally, it was like initially about getting in shape, but then I realized it was actually the person I was becoming in pursuit of getting in shape. So getting in shape was the aspirational thing, like you talked about, getting a six pack, being in great shape, you know, looking a little bit better with your top off whenever you went on holiday. But then I realized over time, as I kind of repeated the process longer term, that that goal of just getting in shape wasn't going to be enough to sustain it in the long term. Because once you maybe get in shape once or twice, obviously you want to get in shape forever. But I think once you've got in shape and stayed in shape for a while, it becomes boring. And then you start to realize, oh, my goals need to fulfill me on a deeper level than just how I look. And I also need to understand that it's not the actual goal or the aspirational target that's the important thing. It's who you become in pursuit of that thing. And I think, you know, everyone can kind of benefit and remember that. And I suppose, you know, a lot of people listen to this potentially run a business or they're in a demanding career. I think the health of a business is greatly determined by the business owner, but I think if you were to share how looking after your health has benefited your business, Mike, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's it's a great point to raise about how it can affect business, but also what you said before about when people first start their fitness journey, they think it's just about aesthetics, and then as all of us will have experienced, we're confident even if people don't know what they're going to experience. We know that all the benefits they're going to get from that. But from a business perspective, I would say, you know, having confidence in the journey that you're on, having energy, you know, managing things like recovery and things, so you can retain information, so you can turn up better, turn up with more energy. And I like to give the example to people, very simplistic example, is that kind of going back to consistency, is how would you progress in your career, whether you're a business owner or whether you're in a career path where promotion is the next step. Like, how do you get that, right? You turn up, you do the work, you go above and beyond, and you work hard. And you don't just get to that promotion and then stop everything that you were doing. This is where so many people go wrong with their fitness. They might blast and just go, right, let me do that for 10 weeks. Let me go back to how I was before. You would never use that attitude in business. So for me, it's keeping that in mind for building a business. It's like, how am I turning up? How am I taking care of myself so I can take care of my business in the same way? And they're both kind of interchangeable.
100%. And it's that point, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And,
Exactly.
you know, how you show up with your health is going to determine how you show up in your business. And a lot of people ask me, you know, and people will actually look for more strategy or the next marketing campaign or the next system that they can integrate into their business to grow their business. But I always say, if you get the person thriving, the people and the profit will follow. So if you focus on you, your own health, energy and performance, how you feel, how you show up every single day, and if you're able to show up with more energy, more confidence and more conviction, you're 100% guaranteed to grow your business through how you're showing up. And I think also it's being able to become a better leader, because as a business owner or a manager or someone who's in a role that other people look to them for inspiration, I think your ability to lead yourself is going to determine your ability to lead others. So, you know, looking after your health, having more energy, being in shape, I think it's a form of self-respect, and it's actually, you know, you treating your body how you want to show up essentially off the back of that, because anything that you do has a consequence. So if you're eating poor quality food all the time, the consequence is feeling low on energy, you know, not being able to have the confidence whenever you pull on that shirt, because you go into a business meeting tomorrow, you pull on your shirt or your suit, it's a little bit tighter than normal, and you have to present to a group of people. You're going to present completely different if you put on a shirt and you looked at yourself in the mirror and you said, I feel good today. And it's like, you know, whenever we were younger playing football growing up, it was always that look good, feel good, play good thing. So when someone got new boots, it was like this running joke that they would have a really good game following a new pair of football boots. And it's kind of similar in that way. So yeah, I suppose for you, Andy, whenever you think about the benefits that you've seen in business thanks to looking after yourself, what does that look like?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It does lead into how you do other things. And for me and the clients I work with, like, none of them are going to see any drop because your productivity will be better. And even you know, if you just schedule in just that little bit of time at lunchtime, get you away from the desk, like whether your PA just puts it as a default in the diary, like you will not lose the time that you put into it. You will probably gain back in productivity in the afternoon or so anyway. Like you're only going to benefit from doing it. I mean, there's no one that's ever not improved their personal standards and not seen a better, benefits in terms of their professional life as well. And I think even what you're saying, like, yes, you're going to feel better. You might present yourself better. Other people will judge you based on your appearance. We can't get away from that. Like if you're up there and you are clearly out of shape, people will prejudge you and think that leaks into other areas. Like there's studies on it, isn't there? Like overweight people are perceived as lazy, even if they're not. They are. So I think it will generate more business. It will generate a better look for you if you don't have to be walking around with a six pack, but just to improve your health and not be having it neglect you.
Yeah. And I think we've all probably been through all the different phases, the phases where, business owners will go through a period where they push business for a period of time and they potentially sacrifice their health. And I get that. And sometimes you have to be in the trenches and be doing the work to actually grow to the next level. But equally, I've been the person that focused so much on business that sacrificed my health. I've also been the person that focused so much on getting in shape that I sacrificed my business. And it's trying to kind of create, and often I don't like the word balance in business because it doesn't necessarily exist. You're always going to be in the trenches. But if you can kind of shift between the two things and also apply value stacking. So value stacking essentially is whenever you think about something that someone really cares about. So someone's highest value might be their family, it might be their career, or it might be being respected. And then if you tie the fact that going into the gym and training and eating good food is going to lead to these things benefiting, then people are more likely to actually show up and do it, where they might not value going to the gym. And they also think that it takes away from the time that they have on a day-to-day basis. But in actual fact, it's giving them back time because they become more 100%. Productive. They get more done every single day. And ultimately, by the end of the week, they've achieved more, but also they've got a reason to be productive because they know, right, well, I'm going to the gym at 1 o'clock, so I need to make sure my first work block of the day is going to be really, really solid. I get what I need done, then I can go to the gym. And also, it's like, we work with someone that was kind of advising us at one stage on, how to improve our business. And he used to talk about being a light switch and how we're not a light switch and we can't necessarily just switch off at the click of a button because you're all in, you're constantly thinking about the next thing you need to do. But equally, being able to go to the gym and train and exercise is allowing you to switch on to something else. And if you've got a business related task or something that's on your mind, then you can put your focus on kind of that thing, which is important. So next question I want to talk about, and we'll start with you, Andy. Whenever you think about the barriers potentially someone might see, so they want to kind of get some help with their health, energy, and performance. They want to improve how they look, feel, and perform, but they're apprehensive about asking for help. Why do you think that is?
I think if it's generally men, they probably feel a little bit vulnerable in reaching out for help, thinking that you're a failure if you need help. A lot of men need to drop that ego. I think a lot of people just think it's going to be too much sacrifice than what it actually is. They feel like they need to be all in. They think it's going to be a complete overhaul on their life. So they kind of think, I need to be in a better place. I don't have to give up this or give up that, when we all know that it's just, like you said before, it's consistently good rather than occasionally perfect. And if we're just 10, 20% better, that's enough. Certainly for the average person to see a drastic difference. Or maybe they've just been stung in the past by having a bad experience with a coach. I think the main thing is that they just think it's going to be more difficult than what it actually is.
100%. And I think reaching out for help is one of the single hardest things to do. And I remember whenever I first reached out to my first coach, I had typed the message about 3 or 4 times, deleted it, then typed it again. And I was like, oh, I'm really going to send this. And I'm really going to be open, honest, and vulnerable with this person. And I think the biggest thing people need to look for is someone that they know that they can trust. They've seen a proven track record of results, testimonials. They've seen this person show up year on year. And people reach out to me and they say, oh, I followed you for 3 years prior to actually reaching out. So it took them 3 years to bite the bullet. And then I remember whenever I first did it, I achieved what I would have achieved in 6 years, in 6 months, because I was provided with the education I needed, the support I needed, the accountability, and an opportunity for me to soundboard things off someone. And ultimately, you want someone that inspires you, and actually you look at and you respect how they show up. And often, people come into our program and I know that they're economically way ahead of me. They've built these businesses with hundreds and hundreds of staff, but they see something in me that they don't see in themselves. And that's that I look after myself. I make sure that because they know how busy I am. I don't like the word busy, but they know how much I have on my plate, but I can still find the time to look after myself because I've made it a priority. I can still find the time to show up in my relationship and make time for Lauren. I can still find the time to have a social life. So yeah, economically they're potentially way ahead in business, but they see something in me that they don't see in themselves. But ultimately, for a high performer, it's being able to drop that ego and actually raise your hand and say, because, and this is one other point, like one guy in the program said to me recently, he says, you're like the boss's boss, Jonny, because they have no one to really be accountable to, but everyone needs accountability, and we all have our own support networks of people that hold us accountable, even though we know exactly what we need to do, but we still need someone to hold us to a higher standard than we currently hold ourselves.
Yeah, that accountability is so important. And as you say, business leaders and things like that, often they don't have that accountability. And a lot of times, something I've noticed with coaching business leaders is if they've achieved a certain amount of success, they'll convince themselves that the way they do things is that everything had to happen that way for them to be successful. And they'll actually be scared to start addressing their health. Or, as Andy mentioned, they'll have preconceived concerns about, okay, is this going to take time away from the business? Is this going to take focus away? Whereas, as you said there, you prioritize it because you know how it makes you feel and how it makes you perform, and you perform the way that you do, and you can be the boss's boss because that taking care of yourself is non-negotiable for you. You know that that's a part of what makes you who you are and how you serve. And I think we all feel that way, that like our training and our physical health will be at the top of our priority list, no matter what.
100%. Yeah, and I think, the gap between someone actually reaching out for help, and whenever I type that message over and over again, it's filled with unknowns. It's filled with preconceived ideas as to how this might look, and until they actually send the message and have the conversation and make sure that the relationship's right for them. Coaching is almost like a relationship building process. You need to build a relationship with person so that you know what makes them tick and what they care about, so that you can almost guide them and give them what they need when they need it, because that's ultimately what people need whenever they're being coached, and give them the support when they need it, and also give them the kick up the ass when they need it. But also sometimes it's an arm around the shoulder. So yeah, I think that's massive. And I think you touched upon this earlier. You'd shared maybe a time in the past where you applied the wrong approach to getting in shape. What was that?
Lots of things, to be honest with you. Yeah, we make a lot of mistakes to start with. But yeah, I think being too drastic, cutting carbs to the point where, yes, you're going to get leaner, but the knock-on effect of that, the lacking energy, the lack of performance, the getting to that level of not being sustainable and having to then surrender too much, beat myself to the ground every time in the gym. Honestly, I could list hundreds, but I think for me it was always a case of like, if I wasn't ripped to shreds, then I wasn't a good enough personal trainer and coach. Where now understanding you can't live that way, and finding, like we said, a better balance with that. I think balance with your body is essential. Like you said, balance with business is pretty much BS, because you're never going to have like the perfect balance. But if you are building a business, but your health, your relationship, your personal life suffers, you haven't won, you've lost ultimately. So I think you just have to find that middle ground with it. And that does take trial and error. Like for me, probably a decade of not really finding it, disordered eating patterns and things like that. But to the point now where it is a good balance from a food point of view anyway.
Yeah, and I think, whenever, we've all been there before, where you do the whole photo shoot thing and you get really lean. And I think post photo shoot is something that's not really talked about, or you've done bodybuilding shows and things like that, where someone does a photo shoot, they get incredibly lean, they put a photo on Instagram, and everyone gives them all this dopamine by saying how great they look, and then a month later you potentially gained 4 to 5 kg, and you almost have this kind of conversation in your head that you need to get back to what you were on the photo shoot. But we know from experience that you're not going to walk around like if we whip the tops off now, we're not necessarily
yeah, exactly.
worthy of a photo shoot.
Yeah.
But it's about being healthy, being fit, you know, and you don't need to be shredded all the time, because people have maybe created this aspirational figure in their head that they seen on the Men's Health magazine when they were a kid, but that person's trained for the Men's Health magazine for 6 months prior to take the photo to then look different thereafter. But for you, Mike, what's a lesson that you can share to everyone that is a mistake?
I think you touched on it there, is that a lot of us, I think probably all of us, and a lot of people listening to this will be when they first start and they try to get in shape, it's more for the benefit of other people. It's what other people think. I'm getting a six-pack to show off to other people. I'm getting big arms to show off to other people. I know I was like that in the gym. When I first started, it was all pecs and biceps, you know, those days, and bro splits and things like that. And then once it becomes a bit more holistic, and I actually, you know, I want to feel good. I want to feel confident. I don't have to be sub 10% body fat to feel confident, and just be able to have my body function the way that I want it to, whether it's for my sports, martial arts, just energy in general. But yeah, I made every mistake that you can make, you know. I was completely anti-tracking calories when I first started. I used to make fun of people that would do that. I would have, all the kind of ridiculous, I have to have all the peanut butter and all the sweet potato and all these really, like, just the stuff I'd read in magazines. I'd follow bodybuilding diets, not realizing, this is how naive I was, not realizing that it was juiced off their eyeballs, you know, and there were other things in play. And then, yeah, I'd go absolutely head over heels into the latest trends and fads and things like that. And then, so I look back on it now and I cringe at it, but you have to go through that, right, to understand. And especially us as well now serving clients, we can say that don't make the mistakes that we've made. We're going to fast track you to results so you don't have to worry about all that rubbish.
Yeah, and I think essentially for everyone listening, it's probably, I think, and we're all probably under the same impression, it's being in a position where you're ready for anything. You know, you're in a position where you can go out for a run tomorrow and it can be okay, or you can go and lift some weights, or you can go and play a football game. And I think, you know, in the past it was like, right, I'm going to train my chest until it rips off and it's going to look great and I'm going to have a big chest, but I'm not going to be able to run the length of myself, or I'm not going to be able to perform normal movements. I've never got to that stage. I'm not. I've never been that muscular, but I've never wanted to be. But equally, the process of muscle building's an incredibly challenging experience, and you know it's a long game as well. So, you know, obviously, I'm not saying that I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything, but whenever I first started training, it was like I was really skinny, and I kind of went to the gym and was really unsure as to what I was going to do. So then I went to the treadmill because that was the comfort zone for me. And I think people listening have got this goal in their head. And I think as well, on the another point, is the fact that people's goals are often scattered. So they maybe have the goal of they want to lose weight and then they want to get bigger, but they want to do it at the same time. And there's a certain stage of your journey potentially you can do that at the same time, but over time you need to commit to one or the other and actually decide upon what that's going to look like. But for you, Andy, whenever you think about the next step on your fitness journey, like what does success look like? Because you've done the whole photo shoot thing, the bodybuilding style, what is success on your fitness journey whenever you've kind of done a lot of those things already?
Well, I think a lot of us, as we do age, we do have a little bit less priority to just being physique focused. We are thinking more about longevity and health. So I think as I've aged, I've definitely a little bit more now. Like I want to live to being 80, 90 and still be physically capable and stuff like that. Like for me now, I am still focused on physique, and performance and stuff like that. I'm doing a photo shoot again in the winter time, and that's really just for me to keep the standards raised and lead by example to clients because they're doing it. So I thought if I join in, I lead by example. It helps. But for me, I want to get back into doing more sport, which I grew up doing, which I kind of neglected as I got busier and busier. And then moving away, I stopped playing football, which I do miss a bit. So, yeah, a little bit more about getting back into sports, but still, again, focused around helping me feel fit and be healthy as much as anything now.
Yeah, and I think everyone listening will want exercise to complement their life as opposed to complicating it. So you want to put yourself in a position where it's keeping you injury free, it's making you more mobile. Like obviously you do the yoga as well, Mike, and I think it's, you know, you get to a point where the goalposts have potentially moved. So whenever we talked about when we first started fitness, it was about being in shape and looking great, and then now the goalposts have kind of moved over time, but it's also understanding. And I think the challenge people face, and I know business owners in particular face this challenge because there's almost no end. And I think when there's no end to something as a business owner, it kind of becomes a challenge because you constantly have targets to work towards in business. So you've got your quarterly review, you know what you're going to work towards in the next quarter. You've also got, you know, what you want to work towards across the next year, what your next hire is going to be. And there's always a deadline with it. So you set the goal and you achieve the goal, and then, you know, you obviously move on to the next one, and then you'll get to a point where you potentially exit your business or sell the business, whatever happens. But in fitness, it's like, it's this constant thing of just showing up each and every single day. And yes, there'll always be new targets and you will meet targets, but the journey almost never ends.
Well, one of my favorite quotes, I think Ross Edgley said this. He said, fitness is a journey that everyone should start, but no one should finish. And I think, as you say, it's finding, we've all been guilty, I think, in the past. I know I have, and I'm sure we all have, of like shiny object syndrome, where you're like, you might follow a particular trend or a particular, you know, whether it's a shoot or bodybuilding or whatever, because you think that's where you should go. Whereas as we've all said now, as we get a little bit older and you're into your football, you're into your golf, I'm into my martial arts, we train in a way that benefits those things that we really enjoy, that's going to help our pursuits, but also our longevity. And I think with business owners and business leaders, it's not getting distracted by things, finding something that's going to complement their progress and the fitness progress. The principles for progress in fitness and progress in business are the same, right? And in hobbies, getting better at hobbies. So it's kind of removing that noise, removing that shiny object syndrome, and just focusing on, okay, what's going to make that pursuit better.
100%. And it's being able to avoid the quick fix, because there's no short-term solution to a long-term problem. So maybe someone trying to get started right now have struggled with said thing for the last 5 years, and they think within 3 months they're going to solve all of those challenges and all the habits are going to change overnight. Because sometimes people go into this and they're like, oh, I'm gonna start training every day, and then I'm gonna eat like a rabbit, and I'm gonna lose loads of weight, and they maybe get results in the short term, but then it all comes crashing down, and it's putting yourself in this position where you're focused on the long game. You know that it's not necessarily ever going to end, but you want to find something that you actually enjoy, that you can actually stick to. And I always ask every single person that's doing anything inside our program, I always say, do you see yourself doing this forever? If the answer is no, then don't do it. So don't follow the next trend. And, you know, often people look for motivation. What's your thoughts on being motivated to get in shape?
Well, I talk about this a lot because people always wait to be more motivated, don't they? When actually the motivation comes after. If we all think back to, or anyone listening thinks back to, when were they feeling the most motivated? Is when they were doing the thing and they were seeing the result, which then caused the motivation to be elevated because they get confidence in what they're doing is working. So, and when it comes to business leaders, like, they wouldn't expect to build their business in 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. They're happy to give years to building that, but then they think they're going to undo habits of a lifetime in a matter of weeks, when you've probably gained that weight slowly and consistently over years. So it's going to take you a little bit longer to change those habits. So I think people, like you say, have got to be patient and got to understand that, like, this didn't happen overnight to get to the position. It's not going to be overnight to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so true, because business owners, business leaders, directors, CEOs, they are smart people. and they have achieved incredible things that everyone in society respects them for. But it's actually the same principles that they've applied to growing their business just need to translate into their health and fitness journey. And they're obviously a committed person. They're obviously a disciplined person. They've obviously shown up and done the boring stuff well over time, but essentially they've dropped the ball in this health element of things. And often people perceive success as to be financial all of the time, and I think we've all came to realize that there's a lot more to being successful, and you wouldn't trade places with a person that is stressed, that drinks loads of alcohol, that smokes, but they built this great business because you want to have multi-dimensional success. Multi-dimensional success is, for me, showing up in my relationship. It's having a good business and changing a lot of lives, but also it's looking after my health, because one of our business owners inside the program recently said to me, they said, he had spent all this time building this business and it was great, and everyone from the outside looking in thought he was fantastic for building this, but inside there was this void and there was this empty feeling because he had done it and he had sacrificed relationships, he would sacrifice his health, and he'd sacrificed everything that actually was important to him because he thought that having money and financial freedom would solve all of his problems, but he was left with this empty feeling inside him.
100%. And I've heard that before. I've coached guys who get incredibly successful with business, but then felt, are left feeling empty because they take their family on a nice luxury holiday to Barbados or something, and then they're too self-conscious to take their shirt off at the pool. They can't play with the kids. They can't go and play tennis with the kids or whatever because they don't have the energy. All they want to do is crash. So the family holiday that they worked so hard towards, they weren't able to enjoy it. And I see so many examples of that, people kind of running themselves into the ground, as you mentioned there with your client. And it's finding that, how to make it sustainable, because I've seen people as well, they don't know what comes after. They might achieve business success and then there's nothing else going on at the same time. So once they might get to retirement age or they sell the business or whatever happens, it's like, okay, well, what's next? What else is there? And if there isn't anything there, that's when people can, like you said, experience that void, experience that emptiness. So, yeah, it's finding going back to what you said about motivation, it's what else motivates you other than just chasing a financial goal or a business goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to getting started in a fitness journey, and potentially someone listening to this might want to lose a little bit of body fat and drop a little bit of weight. Basic principles if you were going to help someone lose their first 5 kg of body fat across the next, let's say, 3 months.
I would say number one thing is address what is the biggest problem. So if you were to only be able to tackle one thing, what would that be? What is the thing that you're aware of that holds you back? And then what can you do with the least amount of sacrifice to improve it? Not eradicate it, but what can you do to improve it? And then that's probably, most definitely, going to be enough for you to drop 5 kilos or even 10 kilos. And everyone's going to know something that they do. They know they do too much. It might be a certain food. It might be a time of the week. It might be alcohol. It might be snacking, whatever it might be. Like, what can you do then that's going to improve that a little bit, that you are not feeling is such a sacrifice you couldn't be doing it in 6 months or even 6 years' time? Because ultimately, that's going to be probably get you the best return from the smallest thing.
100%. And I think if someone was wanting to drop their first 5 kg of body fat right now, I would do 3 things. The first thing I would do is create some sort of roadmap for where you're going. So you've got a roadmap, you've got kind of an idea of what success might look like. And then the second thing that I would do is create some form of accountability. So it doesn't necessarily need to be someone telling you, right, here's exactly what you need to do. And yes, that's our job, but equally it doesn't need to be that. You could communicate to other people around you and you could say, hey, I'm starting this thing. Could you keep me accountable with this and remind me whenever I'm falling off track? And the third thing that I would do is create a macro goal, which is obviously macro goal being the 5 kg of weight loss. The micro actions within that are going to be the thing that drive you towards it, because so many people create goals and targets and it's just a goal, but you want to actually think about what you need to show up and do each and every single day. And in line with that, you want to create some form of minimums and maximums every single week. So minimums and maximums would be, if it's a training minimum and maximum, it might be, I'm going to do a minimum of 2 exercise sessions a week, and I'm going to do a maximum of 4 exercise sessions a week. And that would mean then every week's a successful one, because so many people fail and get frustrated is because they, I failed, I'll start again next week, and then they delay it. Whereas if you did the 2 exercise sessions, we all know that that's fantastic. If you've went from doing nothing to 2 exercise sessions a week, it's unbelievable. And then obviously create some sort of strategy around nutrition. Of course, that's going to be a factor. Daily activity levels, basic principle that everyone knows about now. But also on that, you know, there's a buzzword of doing 10,000 steps in a day for fat loss. But in actual fact, if you went from doing no steps and being in an office job all the time to doing 10,000 steps, you're going to actually find that is pretty challenging in the long term. So it's not that 10K steps this magical figure, but it's just became the norm, and every person on social media is going to tell you should do 10,000 steps, but maybe you should do 4,000 steps and do that for a couple of weeks, and then do 6,000 steps. And of course, that's going to help overall expenditure.
4,000 steps from nothing is still going to make a big difference.
Absolutely, 100%. And when you think about your own mindset and maybe challenges that you've faced from a mindset perspective and how you've overcame them, so this is just quite generic, but you can pick one point in particular. Has there ever been something that you can pick out and be like, oh, I was doing all the wrong things back then, and here's what I needed to do? Or
the thing that was most life-changing for me was the relationship with food. I had a terrible relationship with food. I went from being overweight, not very confident about my belly, to losing it and going completely the other side of it, to being then completely ripped to shreds, but then living a life that was too restrictive. For me, it was, learning that there isn't such thing as a bad food. It's just an overall bad diet that's going to get you out of shape. So for me, not demonizing certain foods and actually understanding energy balance more, and that it's okay to eat this. It's not the answer to why I'm going to get out of shape. It's okay to eat a bit of chocolate, this and that, because I did have a really disordered eating pattern around binging, where I was too restrictive, which when you do go to that extreme of competing, stepping on stage or photo shoots, you do have to go to a realm of obviously being unsustainable. And then it's very difficult to back off, like what you mentioned earlier, to then not be so ripped, because you feel like you're going backwards. And none of us want to go backwards, do we? So it was accepting that, which took it was hard. But for me, getting control of the food side and not letting it control me was what was the change for me.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
I think food as well. Funny story, just because Andy's reminded me of it there. So the first time that when we went to Dubai, I'd heard about the Sam Curran story. I think that was a couple of days before I joined you. I was in another part of Dubai, and I'd just come off a bodybuilding contest, and I had no idea the effect it had on my eating, and I basically couldn't stop eating then.
You were hitting the Biscoff waffles every day.
Mate, for probably 6 months after stepping off stage, I couldn't get my eating under control, and actually ate myself sick. It was the wrong decision. The wrong decision to go to an all-inclusive before I came and met you in Dubai. I was with some friends, actually some jiu-jitsu friends who were competing, and I'd gone to an all-inclusive, and I just couldn't stop. And I wasn't aware that my kind of attitude towards food had just been completely warped by that, and it took 6 months to get that back under control.
How did you overcome it?
I think putting the time in, and I think being around you guys. I think I remember having conversations, and because I was used to being so lean, and I just thought I was fat, and you're like, you're not fat, but and we've all, you've been in photo shoot shape, you've competed. When you're used to seeing that in the mirror, and you have to be very kind of self-analytical when you're competing or getting ready for a shoot or whatever, you're used to seeing that every day. And if you just see a couple of % body fat go on, you start to freak out thinking, I'm obese, and you're not. But your mind plays tricks on you. So that was I just had to give that time and accept the fact that it's not normal to be at those kind of crazy low levels of body fat. And as Andy was mentioning there, making it sustainable, not demonizing anything. And I hate the term everything in moderation, because that's just so subjective. And it's a way for, in my opinion, for lazy people to excuse their diets. But also, yeah, it's you got to make sure you don't demonize things, and you don't need to eliminate anything completely.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult as well, like when you've went to that extreme where you've been pushing something for so long and you've wanted that goal and you've wanted to step on stage, and then off the back of that it's like, oh well, what's next? I'm just gonna eat myself into oblivion and just keep going over the same cycle over and over again. So it's trying to actually, you probably at that stage, and I think that leads me to this point, because often I find is, and this isn't in your case or isn't in any of the cases because they were extreme cases, but I think a lot of people who have ran a business and they're entering their 40s, they're the used to be guy, and they used to be in shape, they used to be really fit, they used to be really healthy, they used to play football at a really good level. But for me, and I think both of you guys, I don't want to be the used to be guy whenever I enter my 40s, and I don't want my kid, if I'm ever lucky enough to have one, to look at me and for me to tell them the stories of how I used to be in shape, because there's absolutely no reason why you can't do it now, because it just is almost this opportunity to look back. But also from a mindset perspective, that must be hard on that person, because they're thinking about what they used to be able to do, and now they're not in a position to be able to do that. But there's no reason why you can't enter your 40s and 50s and still be able to do all those things.
Keeps mentioning 40s here, eh? What have you got against? What have you got against guys in their 40s?
Mike shared his age there before the podcast. He's actually 40. Are you 40? 41. Yeah. Sometimes I sort of bite my tongue when I say that, because you don't look 40, you look great. So if you're listening to this on the audio version, make sure you click on the YouTube and check out Mike's lovely hair and his good tan and all.
That's another podcast about the hair.
Yeah, the hair.
When you're older, you want to be like Mike. Mike says.
That's basically it. When I'm older, I want to be like Mike. If I can have a black belt and be muscular like Mike, that's definitely
when you grow up.
Yeah, when I grew up. What about you, Andy? Obviously, you come across as a confident guy. You always have a laugh and a joke, but there's maybe been a time where you didn't have confidence. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people don't probably believe me that don't know me from when I was younger, but I was about as shy as they come when I was growing up, honestly.
That reaction.
Yeah,
Never.
That's it, yeah. So, yeah, for me, I think the gym massively helped. There was a lot. Going to university obviously gets you out your shell, living away and stuff like that. But, yeah, I was the kid that would be struggling. That's tickled you.
I'm just picturing what we were talking about last night.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, for me it was like, I was like playing football. That was me getting in my comfort zone because I was so confident on a football pitch. But then meet around new people, meeting friends, and I did share this on social media the other day. It's like I think I won Player of the Year like 4 years in a row, but I was too shy to go to the awards night and actually go and collect the award. So I'd pretend to be ill, and then I could collect it at the training pitch in front of less people. Whereas now, obviously, speak on social media to a lot more people.
Win? Club Man of the Year,
most improved. I was good back then, but. Yeah, so I think improving like the way you see yourself and the way you perceive other people, and a lot of that comes from, improving the way you look, doesn't it? Like a lot of our confidence is based around how we look, and if we feel good. And a lot of the people, when they do get to their 40s, 50s, like you said, they're reminiscing about used to be in shape, or I can't wear the things I want to. A lot of the clients tell me they've got things in their wardrobe they haven't worn for 5 or 10 years. But they're keeping them because they want to wear them, and it's like they just feel like they're getting further and further away from it. So, yeah, I think for most people, understand that you certainly can get back to that. You're just doing the wrong things, and you haven't been prioritising it enough, because as we age, a lot of people, they start families, work becomes up the pecking order, and for us to prioritise something else has to give. And for most people, it is their health, time to themselves, especially when they have kids. It can be very, very difficult to do. But then you reach a bit of a rock bottom where they then have to do it because they're really gone down the pecking order. But I think for most people, have to realise that it's not selfish to do that, because you're going to give people your best if you are going to improve your energy and everything like that, because you need to give that to your kids.
Do you think there's any trends that are in like the fitness industry right now that you agree or disagree with?
I think there's always trends flying around, isn't there? You know, the one that springs to mind at the moment is the carnivore diet. I'm just seeing so many people talking about that at the moment. And I guess it's the groups that you kind of move in, or the people that you follow, or whatever. But kind of going back to what you guys touched on before, is that if it's not sustainable, like I think you said it, Jonny, earlier, is that can you see yourself doing this for the rest of your life? If you can't, it's rubbish, you know. So if you're just going to eat meat and animal products, can you see yourself doing it forever? And so that's the trend that I'll use that example, like you guys have already said it, but I'll use it for clients and say, right, can you see yourself doing this? All right, you might be able to do it for 10 weeks. Can you do it? Can you see yourself doing it for 10 years? Plus, you know, I don't want to never eat cookies again, or pizza or stuff like that. Like, nah. So, and yeah, fads like that, like keto, like people who jump on the bandwagon about fasting, or there's so many. And it's making it sustainable. It's making it be able to fit in with your lifestyle. And I think the more extreme it is, the less likely it is that you can make it sustainable.
Yeah, and I think so many people are confused because there's so much noise on social media nowadays. There's no barrier of entry to posting your opinion. And I think the more controversial your opinion is, often the more engagement that gets. And I think that's where people are kind of going wrong, because they're following someone just because they have an audience. So they potentially have authority, but they have an audience, you know, not in every scenario, but in a certain scenario, maybe like the Liver King, for example. So like the Liver King has an audience because he's extreme and he constantly goes against the norm, and everyone thinks he's crazy, but people want to follow that. But then also people start to get in a point where they've consumed so much of his information that they actually start to believe it, because it must be true if he looks like that and he has never taken steroids and, you know, he just eats liver. I don't know what it was.
Testicles and things like that, isn't it?
Animal dicks, yeah.
But this is the thing, like, you know, that's where people are going wrong, and there's so much conflicting information. So where do you actually find the right information?
Well, I think people just think like that's too easy, so it's not going to work. Like just improving my diet a bit isn't going to work. Like I've got to do, because they've only ever done extreme, and it's like they are like an on-off switch. Whereas like I always talk to my clients about this, we've got to be more of a dimming switch. We've got to sit in the middle and understand that we are going to dim down a bit at times like Christmas, because it's based around food and alcohol, but we never just go from extreme both sides. So if we're in that middle and find that sweet spot, we can sustain it. So like what Mike said, if we are always asking clients, do you feel like you can do this longer term? And they're always saying yes, and they're losing weight consistently, they've got a very good chance of keeping that off, because they're not going to have to revert back. They have actually changed their behaviours, and that they get the buy-in that, you know, this is fine. I'm still eating with the family. I'm still going out and having a couple of beers on a Friday night. So they're just improving like the 80% of the week, so they can still do that 20% where you are eating for pleasure and not having to give it up.
Yeah, and I think anyone listening to this, they want to get to a point where they don't feel like they're on a diet, because if you feel like you're on a diet, it's probably going to end. And I don't really like the word diet either, because often that's
finite, right? It's got an end point.
It's going to come to an end, and I think we're playing the infinite game. You want to play the long term, and you want to make some changes, because we all know that person that we used to work with in the office, and their colleague started another diet, and they're like, "Oh, Sandra's on another diet," and Sandra's never going to stick to the diet. Is Sandra the one you use for the videos, or what's the
normally Karen
or Sandra? Yeah.
Karen, but Sandra's going on another diet in the office, and we know that she's not going to stick to it, so why is she doing it over and over again? And I think that comes back to that point, is if you repeat the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, it's never going to change. But, man, that was great. I think we're going to wrap it up, and appreciate you being here. Appreciate you flying from all around the world for this episode. Just for the episode 11 of the Unstoppable Podcast. And if you like this episode, be sure to share it with your friends, and I know that they'll take value. And other than that, man, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.